Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. Another day, another change in the U.S. tariff policy from the White House. U.S. President Donald Trump has decided to grant one industry a short reprieve from the 25% tariffs he has imposed on Canada and Mexico. The auto industry is getting a 30-day exemption from the punishing tax. Megan Fitzpatrick has details from Washington.
Just one day after forging ahead with tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports, President Donald Trump hit the pause button on the auto sector. Now, vehicles subject to the existing trade deal between Canada, the U.S. and Mexico will be given an exemption, but just for a month.
Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd. But at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage.
The reversal came after Trump spoke to the CEOs of the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, and after stocks plummeted Tuesday, including in the auto sector. They bounced back up today in the wake of the exemption news. The reprieve gives the closely integrated North American industry some breathing room to figure out next steps. The companies had hoped for an exemption from the outset, and when they didn't get it, they were bracing for a huge impact. Some in the industry warned plants could shut down within days and that cars and trucks would shoot up in price for customers. Trump made it clear to the automakers that if they want to avoid tariffs next month, they should bring their entire production lines to U.S. soil.
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal.
Overhauling the auto sector and how parts flow back and forth across the borders to make a vehicle won't happen overnight, says this expert.
Nobody's going to be moving a plant in 1 month. So we need to be clear about that. I think in best case scenario, if anything's going to move, it would probably take years to do that.
Leavitt said Trump is open to hearing about other possible exemptions, but in his primetime speech to Congress Tuesday night, he insisted that tariffs are going to make America rich again. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
That 30-day reprieve is a relief, of course, for many here in the auto sector. But while grateful for the pause, one union leader says the situation remains unsettling.
You feel still grim because we don't have an answer. You're just sitting on the edge of your seat, hoping that something will change. It's really unfair, to be quite frank with you. We'll give you another 30 days, which I'm happy about, by the way, because I want the companies to be successful. Like Ford Motor Company has been great to our community, and I'd never want to see them get hurt by decisions that are made that they're not made by them. And it drives me crazy.
Even with the 1 month extension of the tariff deadline for the big three automakers, it still leaves a sweeping number of punishing levies in place on Canadian goods. As Kate McKenna reports, provincial and industry leaders are speaking out.
Hi, Premier.
Ontario's Premier says the auto part carve-out doesn't change things. Canada's not backing down.
We're going to stand solid that zero tariffs or nothing.
This is one of those small victories that we should take. But we should continue with the resolve.
On day 2 of the trade war, the Prime Minister spoke with President Donald Trump. Trump took to social media soon after, accusing the Prime Minister in his last week of office of clinging to power, saying the call ended in a somewhat friendly manner. He wasn't able to tell me when the Canadian election is taking place, which made me curious, like what's going on here. I then realized he is trying to use this issue to stay in power. Good luck, Justin.
This is a war by other means. A war of disinformation and ridicule, questioning our right to exist, our sovereignty, our borders.
Trump says this is about fentanyl. Canadian officials aren't so sure, especially amid Trump's repeated threats to make Canada the 51st state.
Even if the tariffs are withdrawn, we will never go back to where we were 3 months ago. We will never trust the Americans in the same way that we did.
It is a betrayal of a deep and abiding friendship.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says there's no way around it. Alberta has what the U.S. needs, oil.
So until our U.S. friends come back to reality, we will focus on efforts and financial means to export one of the largest oil and gas deposits in the world elsewhere.
Alberta and Saskatchewan are the latest provinces to announce countermeasures. They're planning to take American booze off of store shelves and prioritize Canadian companies for government contracts. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
We've got Colette Kennedy with us now. And Colette, we are in the middle of that special weather statement taking effect right now, happening right now, rather.
Yeah, and just, experiencing all different types of weather phenomena. Even at one point, sunshine and 13 degrees today. But of course, there's been plenty of rain in the region as well, melting, and that risk then of localized flooding, even some embedded thunderstorms in there. And then we do get into this winter weather travel advisory, and that's tonight as the temperature falls. As it slips, we'll change over to a mix, and then even some wet flurries, perhaps even some ice pellets or freezing rain, making it pretty tricky on the roadways. Still a lot of rainfall to go through before that temperature drops, but overnight tonight it will. And tomorrow's high, just 3 degrees. We're going to take 10 degrees off.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Up next, every day, thousands of trucks carry goods across the Ambassador Bridge. And for them, Donald Trump's 25% tariff means a bumpy ride. As Jacob Barker reports, the industry says that there are things the government can do to soften the blow.
What's going on? Are you going to make it back tonight?
It hasn't quite been business as usual here at On Freight Logistics since the U.S.-Canada trade war began Tuesday. Crossing the border with goods is a big part of what makes their wheels go round.
It's definitely taken a little bit longer for our drivers to cross, getting pulled in, but we're just dealing with it as we can.
President Stephen Oneko Sr. says there was a big shipping rush on Monday as clients tried to beat the clock.
There was a concerted effort by a number of our customers to get product across the U.S. border before the tariffs were implemented.
While costs for On Freight's customers may be going up, so too will the costs for the trucking companies themselves. Truck tractors may be subject to tariffs. According to the American Trucking Association, a 25% tariff on Mexico could add as much as $35,000 US to the price of a new one.
It's going to be subject to a lot of scrutiny by us and by our financial people to make sure we're doing the right thing going forward.
Gurjeet Singh has been trucking with On Freight for the last 3 years. He says the tariffs will affect his family.
Because if we are not getting ours, so how I can put food on my table, right? Right now I don't have any backup plan. So I hope so tariffs will disappear and we can get the same work as we have before.
70% of goods transported across the border between Canada and the U.S. annually moves by truck. But according to Stephen Laskowski of the Canadian Trucking Alliance, the freight market was already the worst it has been in the last 40 years.
There's already been layoffs in our industry. We are expecting more layoffs the longer these tariffs are applied.
Oneko says that On Freight is in a good position to weather the tariffs, but it's prepared to make changes depending on how things go.
We will do the same thing. We will cut costs wherever we can. It would include possible layoffs if things get to that point.
The CTA says this year carriers have already started canceling orders in wake of the tariffs. The organization representing trucking companies says it's asking for the federal government to remove the excise tax on diesel. It's also asking for an end to the carbon tax. That, it says, would save them between $15,000 and $20,000 per truck per year. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
Along with commercial traffic, many of us have crossed the bridge and the tunnel into Detroit and back again. But that shopping trip will now end up costing you more. The days of being waved through for the odd small U.S. purchase are over. As Pratush Thayal explains, the hit comes due to Canada's counter tariffs.
If you are returning from some shopping from the States, you will be paying the 25% tariff on a bunch of items. People in the States for less than 24 hours, like most cross-border shoppers, were never exempt from duties at the border. But now, for common items like different kinds of food, cosmetics, wine, clothing, you will be paying the 25% extra. But Canada Border Services Agency says personal exemptions will remain in place for longer trips. That means you will not have to pay any tariffs as long as you're within the exemption. If you're returning after a day but less than 48 hours, you are exempted as long as the value of your goods is less than 200 Canadian dollars. But tobacco products and alcoholic beverages are not included in this exemption. If you're gone for longer, returning after 2 or more days away, the limit jumps to 800 Canadian dollars, where you don't have to pay any duty or taxes or tariffs. You can bring up to 1.5 liters of wine or 1.14 liters of alcoholic beverages, or about 24 cans of beer. You can bring back 200 cigarettes or 50 cigars. And if you're returning after a week or more, the same tobacco and alcohol limits apply. The CBSA has a complete list of goods subject to tariffs available online. This will also apply to commercial shipments and goods imported by mail or courier, and CBSA says that these tariffs will remain in place until the US eliminates its tariffs against Canada. CBSA says it's not that you can't bring items into Canada, it's just that you need to pay the tariffs. And this will also apply to duty-free items, meaning your items can be duty-free, but not tariff-free. Pratyush Tyal, CBC News, Windsor.
Turning now to other news, we've been telling you about the outbreak of measles in Ontario. Well, today, the Windsor-Essex Health Unit is confirming a case in our region. They say a person at Cornerstone Christian Academy in Ruthven has tested positive. They are asking all families of students attending the school to call them and isolate the students. The health unit says the exposure window is between February 21st and February 24th. Now, aside from the school, they've also identified 2 other exposure points, the TMC Kingsville Walk-in Clinic on March 1st and the Met Campus on Sunday, March 2nd. Symptoms to look out for include fever, runny nose, cough, drowsiness, irritability, and red eyes. And a red rash appears on the face 3 to 7 days after the start of those symptoms. Roughly 200 cases have been reported across southwestern Ontario over the last several weeks. A global concept about a city's structure is gaining support here in Windsor. CBC's Marcia Dubsky explains.
A local architect wants Windsor to be a strong town. But what does that mean?
Strong Towns is a movement that reimagines how a city is designed. In a strong town, the car isn't king, and pedestrians and public transit are priorities.
My main goal is to get Windsor to have safer and better designed streets and public infrastructure, better public transit, and I hope to unify all the activist groups here in Windsor who all want the same thing.
One of the groups supporting the Strong Towns movement is Activate Transit Windsor Essex.
Strong Towns and Activate Transit Windsor Essex have a lot of shared goals. Strong Towns focuses on like better urbanism, more financially sustainable cities, and so a lot of that has to do with transit. And like there's an obvious connection there between Strong Towns and Activate Transit when we talk about enhancing transit in Windsor Essex.
So far, 200 people have joined TU's local Strong Towns chapter, including a local architect who believes Windsor can benefit from the global idea.
If you're constantly dependent on a car to get your groceries, to go to church, to go to your doctor's office, whatever you need, that's forcing people into an economic situation that's not necessarily capable for everyone in Windsor.
TU used software to redesign Dugal Avenue. He says the road is far too wide and not properly used.
So it should be busy, but it's not. It's dying, and Windsor's just content to let it die. It's a huge area that could be used for things like better housing and better commercial buildings, but it's not. It's a dead space.
He separated bike lanes so he can eliminate the risk of collisions between a cyclist and a vehicle. And he has spread out some bus stops and shortened the crosswalks to make it safer for pedestrians. While Strong Towns is new to Windsor, the idea caught on in other cities.
The local chapter plans to put the concept into action. Strong Towns will start by cleaning up the garbage in the streets of Windsor. They believe it's a small but right step towards a better city. Marcia Dubsky, CBC News, Windsor.
A near catastrophe was averted today. Take a look at these images shared by Chatham Kent Fire. Multiple cats were rescued from a structure fire in Tilbury. No injuries were reported, and the fire is currently under investigation. Oh, like a happy ending like that. Take a live look outside. There's some unpleasant wet weather out there today. Colette will talk us through the next few days later in the program. And when we come back, a front row look at a scientific expedition in Antarctica. Stay with us. Welcome back. An all-Canadian team of scientists has been hard at work in Antarctica this week, collecting samples from the Southern Ocean in their quest to better understand climate change. CBC News has had a front row seat as they conduct their research. Susan Ormiston reports from on board the HMCS Margaret Brooke.
Every day, suit up,
Get me a little further.
load up, and don't forget any piece of equipment.
Well, I've got 5 bottles, 5 glaciers.
The scientists are headed out to the glaciers, lowered in a Navy boat turned research craft, to measure what's changing in the ocean at the bottom of the world. We're going with them. Antarctica helps regulate the global climate, but sea ice is melting to near record lows. February had abnormally warm temperatures, which over time affects everything in the ocean ecology.
We've seen a ton of penguins today. Hopefully there'll be some penguin DNA in there, some whale DNA.
Jenny Tolman is capturing DNA in water samples. But her expertise is the smallest of organisms.
Microbes are the little engines of the ocean. They're also the things they respond the most quickly to change, and the poles are a very rapidly changing place.
Collecting seawater can be tricky work. Tia Anderlini is studying trace metals, maneuvering a long pole to grab uncontaminated samples.
I was using a really long pole, basically to avoid contamination from the boat itself.
Woohoo! And sometimes things just happen.
Ooh, I dropped it.
A plastic lid slipped into the ocean. Not ideal.
Can you look over and see if there's a cap floating under the boat?
Everyone looks for it, and within minutes, the cap reappears. Fished out successfully with an oar. Glaciers are retreating in the Antarctic Peninsula more rapidly than before.
The time is 17:13, and the depth is 51 meters.
One way to measure what's going on is grabbing sediment from the sea floor. Jeremy Bentley lets down a large claw to the depths and then hand over hand hauls it back up to deliver a muddy mass. There are clues here, and with deeper cores, about glacial history.
We're looking at changes over time.
Including human imprint, like any evidence of microplastics.
It's like a Christmas day for me with a good sediment sample.
A good bit of mud.
Yes.
Most of the samples will go back to Canada to analyze and share. There's more ambition than time. It's so rare to get here. The challenge is worth it.
It's a great day for samples from glaciers from here.
1, 2, 3.
You got everybody? Day's end, it's back to the mothership with a bit of Antarctic scientific treasure to advance our understanding of what's happening to our climate. Susan Ormiston, CBC News in Admiralty Bay, Antarctica.
A U.S. company is on a quest to bring back extinct animals, but they're starting small. So not those big, scary dinosaurs like in Jurassic Park. So think like way small.
Colossal Biosciences is the world's first de-extinction and species preservation company. And on the path to bring back some of these iconic species like the dodo, the Tasmanian tiger, and the mammoth, we need to invent a lot of new technologies that can also help conservation. So we actually engineered mouse equivalent of mammoth genes that we've identified on our quest to bring back the mammoth into mice in a healthy way and produced what we believe is cold-tolerant, woolly phenotype-driven mice. We believe it's better to have a de-extinction toolkit and not need it than need a de-extinction toolkit and not have it.
We know that ecosystems that are more biodiverse are more robust and resilient. And we hope that by reestablishing these interactions, by protecting species from becoming extinct, we will protect and preserve biodiversity that will help stabilize ecosystems and stop the loss of species today.
That's so interesting. Do you have a story that you think we should cover? Well, we want to hear from you, especially if you're a local business or you're a worker who's being impacted by this trade war with the United States. You can reach us by text message at 519-984-2051. You can also email us at windsor@cbc.ca. And when we come back, Colette Kennedy will be with us. She'll tell us more about the forecast in the days ahead. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy is back with us again. Colette, talk us through these weather advisories. What's going on with them?
Yeah, and these changing conditions, so the different advisories that we're dealing with. So a lot to go through here. The special weather statement, this has been in place for the milder temperatures and the melt and the runoff and the amount of rain, so that risk of localized flooding. But we get into a winter weather travel advisory as we go through the night tonight and into tomorrow as the temperature falls and that leftover moisture turns over to a mix and then even some light wet snow. So big changes. I mean, the temperature has already fallen from 13 down to 4 degrees, still double digits towards Sarnia and London as well, getting some areas of dense fog a little bit further towards the east, though. So that's another thing that's developing. However, the wind's mixing the air here, so not likely to see as much of that. The sustained winds over 40 kilometers an hour, and we've got wind gusts that are now approaching 60 kilometers an hour. So that's part of the story, too, are the strong winds that we'll have as we go through tonight into tomorrow. Those will be blowing things around as well, so reducing visibility in that sense. The radar showing us that right now it's still in the liquid form, in the form of rainfall. Some of those thunderstorms, you see some of the lightning strikes there out over Lake Erie. There's still some embedded storms in there, and just broadening the perspective so you can see back to the west where that colder air is in place, where that is snowfall on our radar. So let's take you through as we go through the evening hours. There's still some more moisture to come, but you can see around 9 o'clock getting into that mix, maybe even some ice pellets or a little bit of freezing rain in there. Some wet and slick roadways, certainly possible tomorrow morning. This is 7 a.m. And then let's roll this forward, and finally, as we get towards the latter part of the day tomorrow, so into the later afternoon and evening hours, we will get into some clearing, but it's still going to be a much cooler feel, and those winds will still be on the stronger side. So in terms of additional rainfall, it's negligible, a couple of millimeters, perhaps up to 5 millimeters, locally heavier where there are those pockets with a few thunderstorms or at least stronger cells. And then that snowfall potential, yeah, I mean, likely to kind of melt on contact, but we could see a few centimeters through here. The temperature will be dropping through the overnight. By tomorrow morning, we're going to be at -2, and we'll kind of settle there for a while. And then into the afternoon, late afternoon, when we get those sunny breaks coming back, that's when we could see the temperature going up to 3 degrees, but it's not going to feel like it because of those winds. Friday, we rebound a little bit, and never mind rebounding a little bit, how about a lot as we get into next week?
Yeah, again, the roller coaster continues on and on. Thanks so much, Colette. Thanks to you all for watching. Have a great night.
Good night.